Hello and welcome. And today the topic is learning to fail. Because as a nation, I think it's becoming a culture, a tradition, I don't know what, but we seem to be learning to fail. Where year in, year out, the results that are coming from students who write exams, the failure rate seems to be going higher. And it's a sad story. However, you find people who are supposed to be responsible giving excuses and reasons to sort of soften the blow or say it's not as bad as it is. 242,162 children write an exam, and only 68,000 are able to come up with pass rates that are good for tertiary institutions. How do you go forward like that? Whose fault is it? At which point did we realize that the students were not good enough for the exams? And how do we turn this around? Now, any time that education comes in, I become a bit passionate. Because, you know, folks, the only thing that makes a country wealthy is intelligent people. It doesn't matter how much gold, oil, diamond you have. The only thing that will make a nation prosperous is intelligent people. Funny enough, the only way you get intelligent people in the modern society is to take them through school and properly educate them. What are we doing to our future? If indeed only 28% people passed, 20 years from today, how many graduates would we expect to hold the country in place and take it further from where we left it? It's going to be a very interesting discussion. And with me in the studio is a senior educationist, Anis Haifa. My name is Nana Ansah-Quao, and this is PM Express. Learning to fail, and with me to discuss this very passionate and very important, indeed dire topic is Anis Haifa, who's a senior educationist, one who trains teachers of how to train you and I, and he's also passionate about it. Anis, you're welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
And I'm always glad to have you in there when it's education, because I know I'm going to learn something at it by the end of the day. But this situation confronting us, you know, 240,000 students sit an exam, and 68,000 are able to come out with degrees that are results that are worthy enough of going into the tertiary institution. I don't know how to explain it, whether I'm too emotional or if it's a normal thing. I don't know.
Yeah, we need to be emotional. I'm very emotional too. I've been emotional all day since I read this, you know. But then that is bad enough. The results are bad enough. But the worst part is where we accept that this is normal. Now, when we accept such failures, or we develop the mindset to accept such failures as normal, there's a price to pay for it. The price meaning that the first price are poverty, diseases, short lifespan, you know, and also the we don't live long enough. You know, all these are interrelated. It's not that we are not speaking about education in a vacuum. There's something to it. And then let's look at, you know, again, when we begin to compare ourselves, we look down and say we are better than this, so we are okay. We need to look up and look at the best possibilities and what it is that we can do as a nation. I mean, this is what our founders stood for. That is what Kwejo Aggrey stood for. That's what Mensah Saba stood for. That is what Kingsley Hayford stood for. That is what Kwame Nkrumah stood for. And these are the pioneers. These are our mentors. So we need to liaise with them spiritually, at least, in terms of what they've done. Now, let's look at the cost of education if we relegate it to the back and think that's all important. Look at a country like Finland. They select their best brains for teaching. In fact, it's more difficult to get into a school of education in Finland than it is to get into medical school or any of these other professions. The reason being this: they don't have the resources that we have. They don't have gold, they don't have diamonds, they don't have bauxite, they don't have timber, they don't have cocoa, they don't have any of these things. So what are they focusing on? Their brain power.
Gray matter.
The gray matter, the brain power. Now look at a product like Nokia. There was a time where Nokia, and I haven't done the numbers on this, but I would imagine that that product alone fetches more money, external source of income for Finland, than all our resources put together What does that tell you? That's another way to look at it. Also look at even South Korea. They don't have the resources that we have, but they have the Samsung. And look at the amount of money that they generate for that to uplift the whole society and have a higher per capita income. So we cannot take education for granted. And it's really disappointing to me when people who should know better say that, oh, this is normal. In fact, this is even better than last year. This is where we begin to look at the gutter as opposed to looking at the white clouds in the air and say that these are the possibilities. So it really bothers me when we begin to accept mediocrity. And then the other thing that also bothers me is that when you look at the cognitive abilities of human beings, if you look at the cognitive ability that God has put in everybody's head, the mind, the brain in any Ghanaian child or any African child is just as good as anywhere else. I mean, if a kid was born in Ghana and you raise them in Mexico, they become Mexicans. If they were born in Ghana and you raise them in China, they become Chinese. If you took them to, let's say, India, they become India too. The brain is malleable. But how do we package the brain so that it begins to do the best that it can out of its own God-inherent abilities? These are the concerns. The other thing, too, that I worry about is that I've seen young people in this country who are not doing WASSCE, but they are doing the external programs. They are not doing West African Exam Council type examinations, but they belong to another examining body, like the Cambridge International Examinations. And you'll be surprised, the number of Ghanaian children who are getting A stars in it. Now, the reason why they are getting A stars is because they are in a private situation where the proprietors are very serious about education, and also the fact that there's good teaching going on. So those kids, in fact, they don't want to even have Bs. They want A's and A stars. We can do the same thing. So we have to always look at the opportunity cost of not exerting ourselves intellectually. That's one example. Another example is a Ghanaian kid who was in the US. Mother is Ghanaian, the father is Ghanaian. This kid was able to get access to any of the 7 or 8 Ivy League schools in the United States, from Harvard, Penn State, I mean, just name it. This is a Ghanaian kid. His brain is no different from the brains of children here. But then it's up to us now to begin to look at how we can nourish, how we can begin to nurture, how we can begin to raise our young people. These are the concerns that we have. So when I see results like these, and we have apologists who say that this is fine, it's sickening because it's not fine. I'll give you another instance. I remember I was on another radio program some time ago, and we're looking at the BEC results. In that case, 50% of the students had failed. And then as we were discussing the way forward, what it is that we have to do, and I think we raised that, we can also begin to talk about how we can improve these scores. But for now, so as we're talking about raising the standards, we had a call from someone from the ministry, a public relations person. It's, oh, the 50% is normal. The 50% failure rate is normal. Last year, it was 50%. This year, it was 50%. And next year, we expect 50% too. Now, when you have someone who is in the employment in that particular situation,
not concerned, and
not concerned or even accepting that 50% is normal, then it's cause for alarm. Because here, we pay people, we put down fantastic buildings, we put them in air conditioners, they are paid every month, they are driving nice cars. The least they can do is to begin to prepare their minds where we can raise the whole country through the youth. So when we are not getting those kinds of responses, I think it's very disappointing. The other point that I want to also make in terms of results like these is the example of Singapore. They too are very concerned about how the brain works and how they can get the best out of their population, starting with the youth. You know, and like Singapore, excuse me, Lee Kuan Yew was in Ghana in the early 1960s because he wanted to be enthused by something. You know, and say, hey, this is an African country that have fought through the mill to become independent. I want to see what their aspirations are. He came and he said, my goodness, your best brains, this is an agricultural country, but your best brains are being used to study Latin and Greek. He said, I don't see any future for this country. And also, I don't think I can get my inspiration from here. So he moved on. So what I'm saying is this, the time has come where we have to begin to look at the best practices. We want to begin to look at the countries that are really exerting themselves and say that, yes, we want to be like that. We don't want to be with the losers. We want to be with the winners. And that is a mindset that our politicians, our leaders, people in the education system have to really upgrade themselves with. That we cannot accept mediocrity. We cannot accept to be, how do you call it, accept these kinds of results so that we can move on. And the possibilities are there.
I mean, what comes to mind, I'm not a teacher, but I presume, I mean, one of the reasons they've given is that the kids were writing in text language or shorthand, you know, so social media language, as they call it. Now, you'd realize that, I mean, from day one to examination, there might have been mocks, there might have been homework, I mean, there must have been something. I mean, when did they realize the shorthand? That's, you know, you were teachers, you could help us. You
know, right from the beginning, we have to know the quality of young people that we want to raise. And we need to be prepared enough with the mechanics to make this things happen. I've heard all kinds of excuses, one of them being the text type messages. When I send messages too, I'm like a child. I want to do very quickly. So before is B and for. You know, CU is C and U. But I know that this is shorthand. Now, if I'm writing prose and compositions, I know that I'm in a different genre. That B4 was not acceptable. We have to spell it out. All we need to let the kids know, this is the cognitive abilities, that know the genre that you are working in. It's not shorthand. This is an examination situation, and these are the expectations of you. I have no qualms with young people sending messages with quotes, because I do the same thing too. It's faster for me. The other thing too is that we should never be afraid of using the new methods of getting things done. You know, that is what research is for. That is what experimentation is for. That is where we are moving towards the 21st century. And then I will tell you, also when they even say, I'll come back to that one, but when they even say that young people are speaking in broken English, that's a different genre. I can speak broken English. So, Charlie, where you go? You come. Yesterday I wait for you, not come out today, I will come out. We can say that, but that's another genre. But I can also speak the standard English. All we have to let young people know is that these are the things that we're doing. This is appropriate for this occasion. This is not appropriate for that occasion. What's appropriate is something else. Young people can understand that. But for us, we are so caught in the low cocoons that we live in that anything that is innovative scares us as adults. But you have to understand that the young people are in the digital age. You and I are digital immigrants. You know, I struggle to go through computers sometimes, but all my work is done on the computer. I'm not as fast as my children. And in fact, when I'm caught by not knowing a particular key to strike for something, or I don't know how to do a particular design, I call my children in, or any kid who's around me, and invariably they will fix it. We have to begin to see our children as collaborators with us. We have to see them as colleagues. This business of for African culture, where children are not to be seen, where children are not to be heard, and we think they are not intelligent, and we think they are not confident, it comes from us. It comes from the parts of our traditions that have become so primitive, so outmoded, that we need to get them out of the way and move the children forward. Because the concern is this: the world the children are going to live in are very different from the world you and I are living in now. So the least we can do is to get the children to stand on our shoulders and scan a bigger and better horizon. That's our responsibilities. But under no circumstances should we short-circuit their ability to progress in the world. And I'm saying this because during the training that I do, in places, there are no computers, of course, but there are other places where there are computers, but the computers are covered up. Because the teachers themselves are afraid to extend themselves to begin to understand what the computers are and not what the computers are doing. So then we do we do some basic things like this is the mouse, this is the keyboard, this is this is that. That's the end of it. We don't do that. We have to put them in a position where they are in the driver's seat to get things done. Now, let's address this other question that you ask: how do we improve systems so that?
I mean, with regards to math, I mean, what was that? Because I don't know if there's a shorthand for math. I mean, if there's a shorthand for English, so you failed me. But how about math? I mean, what I'm trying to find out is where are they hiding their faults? Because the children equally failed math, and there's no, you know, social language for math. 2 + 2 is 4. There's nothing else you can.
You know what? I hadn't even thought about that. I mean, that's an excellent way to show that there has to be a better reason than the childish reasons that we're getting for young people failing. Math is a classic example, or even science for that matter. But then science is reduced. I mean, if you look at chemical compositions or chemical calculations, water is CO, what is CO2? Is it carbon dioxide is CO2?
CO2,
Water
yeah,
is H2O.
H2O.
These are all, what are these? These are shortcuts, you know, abbreviations, and that sort of thing. So they cannot, we cannot accept that. Frankly, even when I've gone to schools where I've helped them to convert from the manual into digital formats, you have to learn how to abbreviate the subjects so that you don't, you want to develop file names where, let's say, science becomes SC, for example, biology becomes BI. You know, it's not a big deal, but it fits a structure where we can begin to trace information. So the important thing is for us at any point in time to know what it is that we're doing. You know, so we cannot use those things as excuses.
Collectively, as a nation, now we've reduced education or schooling. We've reduced schooling to enrollment, and you know, schooling has, you know, education has become schooling. So that's education itself. It's on the back burner. We haven't gotten there yet. But you know, I'm listening to you that, you know, without education, you know, your life is short. Corolla is out of the breaks. I mean, of course, you know, university professors getting the corolla. You realize that it's people who were denied opportunity. So what then does it ginger us to realize that we are playing with fire and that will come back and bite us?
You see, that is the, you know, I was reading a report in a graphic today where I think the gentleman who is the judge who is involved with the judgment debts said something about the disappointments from the so-called educated people in our society. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people, there was a time where a lot of people went to get a bachelor's degree at our universities and didn't have to pay much for it. It was subsidized by the government. They went on to do a master's degree, and sometimes it was for free. They went to other countries to do a PhD program. All these were supported by the government. Now, what are these people putting back into society? Mm-hmm. Exactly what they took out. And then the other thing is that invariably, when it comes to white-collar crimes, these are some of the people who are perpetuating these kinds of things. So we talk about education, then our great expectations are those who've had the benefit of education to help those who are less fortunate. And Nkrumah talked about that all the time. You know, in his book, Ghana, the Autobiography of Kwame Nkrumah, that those who have had the benefit of education are not visible in terms of trying to raise other people up. Everybody wants to be better than everybody else. And that is the beginning of poverty, where we think that we have to, like crabs in a bucket, we have to pull everybody else down. But that's primitive. We have to raise everybody up. That's what makes a difference. If you raise somebody up, the day that you need help, the person that you raised up is the one who's going to help to raise you up in another situation. So our traditions and our selfishness and conceitedness in this situation, we have to begin to flush those down away so that we understand that the best for us is to be the best that we possibly can be. That's the first part. And then raise others to be the best that they could possibly be. It's a two-way street. That's what we have to do. But in Africa, we have a problem with that, you know. And the other thing I will also say is that in my column this year, Education Matters in the Graphic, I made note of it, that if you look at the 100 top universities in the world, not one of them came from Africa. Why? Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology should be there. University of Ghana should be there, because they have professors and they have lecturers like other people.
University of Ghana actually ranking 5,500. That's the ranking.
I mean,
5,500.
Can we accept that? But then look at the top three. The top three, Harvard, MIT, and Stanford. They are consistently tops. Why? You know, because they are committed to what it is that they do, you know. And then even now, when it comes to digital technology, they are leading. Look, and I hope our university people are listening to this. There also has to be the element of collaboration. Harvard is good by themselves. MIT is good by themselves. But they saw the sense in collaborating their work. So they've introduced particular kinds of online courses, just for the Harvard and MIT students, so for everybody, you know, for the whole world, the universality of what it is that we're doing with education. And even the Khan Academy, you know. So the other thing that I'm suggesting, where we can begin to also raise the scores of our young people, is that the time has come when our young people have to be part of the teaching and learning process. Many times, one of the reasons why we have this kind of resource is that what happens in a classroom situation when the teacher is not there? This is, and I think we can use this now.
Yeah, we use this.
Yes. When the teacher is not there, this is really what happens. If we can have...
Let me get my cameraman to zoom into that, and then you see, yeah, we got that. We got it?
Right. This picture is typical. This almost like, this is a high school. And look at the apathy. Young people folding their arms. You know, they've almost given up.
Slouch.
How are they going to pass the examinations under these conditions? And what I say is that this is the certain culture that we have in this country. In class 1, we sit. JHS 1, we sit. Senior high school, we sit. So we develop a certain culture. When it's time for us to get things done, it becomes a problem. However, we can change things and have young people engaged in a way where they begin to see the usefulness of what it is that they do. Now, that's hands-on. And here you can even see young people helping others. This is what education is about. You know, education now is not about people memorizing things and reproducing them on examinations. There's other things that we have to begin to understand. The tenacity, the perseverance, the curiosity to get things done. All of that has to be part of the package. So what I keep saying is this. When it comes to even developing teaching and learning materials.
Like that, because we are so very selfish when you're learning. Don't teach him. Don't show him. Don't help him. You know, and then you have to cover your work and bury your head down. And sometimes it's not
and
like...
a little cubicle on the corner.
You know, and it's not a final exam. It's a classwork that, you know, we could, you know, share ideas. You know, how come you got 2 and how come I got 3? But it's like, no, just... So I really like that idea, and I hope that it sinks in, because I think it makes us as a very selfish people. You know, don't show him, don't teach him, don't show him, and it's all the way through school.
You know, I used to be like that. I used to be like that because that's how I was brought up. Till I was involved in a program in the U.S. called the Gifted and Talented Education. And the focus was on collaborative learning, cooperative learning, where you do things together. And the rationale is very simple. That when you come out and you work, you don't work by yourself. I mean, go to the banks. Yeah, people working together. I mean, go to the MTN offices, people working together. Go to research companies, people working together. So why are we not working together in the classroom so that we know exactly what collaboration is all about? But that little bit of selfishness that we have as Africans, it spoils everything for us. You know, it always has to be self-centered in some way. So these are some of the things that we have to begin to look at. But one of the most important things now is where teachers have to stop hoarding information away from the young people. You know, the program what you just saw with the children on the computers, they are helping to establish teaching and learning materials. It's not just the domain of a teacher. It's one of the simplest things to do. But then if the teacher who is coming out of the training institutions themselves are not familiar with how we begin to even develop our teaching and learning materials, how are they going to even begin to think that young people can do that? That lack of confidence ripples through the whole system and is destructive. So when I do my training, the question is, how can I bring the people in there? You know, here you are in front of 30 people, 40 children or 50 children. How do we bring them into a learning process? Besides them sitting down and listening to you all day, how much can one person do? You know, but all this is the mindset in this country. The old mindset has to go. And you have to bring in the new mindset that is cooperative learning, collaborative learning, respect for young people so they can excel.
I'm going to take a break here. And there's one thing that's bugging my mind. You see, because approximately, I think 70%, well, 70% of Ghanaian population are dependent on others. Either they are too young or too old or don't have money. And if you look at the National Health Insurance Scheme, 70% of the beneficiaries on there are on there for free because they can afford it, they're too old or too young. What is the cutoff point? So at the moment, 30% of us can carry the 70%. At what point could you say what? Maybe 10% people aren't able to carry the 90% along? Because with this failure rate, the dependency rate is also going to go up. What is the cutoff rate? Stay tuned, I'm coming back. where do we go? But before I let my senior brother answer the question, let's look at an insert. And we have Aklesteg Kujo speaking, who's a PRO for WAEC. What are the reasons? Let's see.
Examiners came up with a summary of their candidates' weaknesses for this year's May-June WASS. And some of them were non-adherence to rubrics, that is, the candidates do not adhere to instructions for some of the papers, inadequate preparation, misunderstanding of the questions and deviation, lack of understanding of scientific terms and mathematical concepts, poor orthography, poor expression in English language, and then poor handwriting. So those were some of the weaknesses that the chief examiners identified. Well, when you look at last year's figures, last year we had double candidature of about 409,000 candidates. And we had 19.15% who obtained grades A1 to C6 at a sitting in 6 subjects, including English language and mathematics. That made up about 78,000 candidates. This year we have 28.11% getting grades A1 to C6, which is about 68,000 candidates. So those are the figures. So you cannot say that this year is worse than last year. I'm looking at the figures. But this is 28%. Last year was 19%. Last year we had 78,000 out of 409,000 candidates. This year we had 68,000 out of 242,000. So those are the figures.
Now you don't know whether to cry or whether to rejoice because there's an improvement. So I think we'll go back to Agnes's response before I go back to my question. But so there you go, it's an improvement from 19 to 28%.
Well, you know, statistics can be deceitful. I don't know on what basis we had the 19%, on what basis that we had the 28%.
Well, because I think there was 409,000 and 78,000 made a pass. But this time there was only half, which is 242 and 68,000 made the pass.
To be honest with you, I didn't even know that last year was that bad. You know, because but this year it's terrible. You know, there has to be a benchmark below which we cannot accept as looking at the kind of investment in education. And we hear all the time that if you look at the Ghana budget, a good portion of it goes towards education.
8.4%.
And can we justify the amount of money that we spend with this kind of result, this 7 out of 10 failures? We can't accept that. So, well, then it's good news that we are getting out of the rut, but we are still in the rut. And I think we really need to get out of it. We cannot accept, in fact, 50% failure rate cannot even be accepted.
No.
So we need to raise our limits higher. We need to begin to understand that we cannot raise our young people in this country with those kinds of rates.
Why are we blaming the students and not the teacher? If they were ill-prepared, if they didn't understand scientific terms, if they couldn't express themselves in English, if the handwriting wasn't eligible, I mean, why are you blaming the student?
That is the point. You know?
That's why he came to school, because he can't speak English.
The worst thing we do in this country is that we blame the victims. You know, look at a kid who's preparing to go to a university, and the kid hasn't done well, and we blame the victim. But what she did is called a formative assessment. A formative assessment is, how did the kid feel? Now, you raised the question. Poor handwriting, you should have known that. You know, lack of understanding of the questions, we should have known that. Lack of understanding of even how we develop syntax in terms of writing expressions, we should know that. That's the responsibility of the people who are being paid in a system.
Yeah, that's why he came to school.
And the kids come to school not because they are smart. They come to school because they need to learn. They need to learn the handwriting. They need to learn to understand what the question is. They need to learn to ask their own question too. It's a symbiotic relationship. But then they are caught. They are caught in a model where they can't excel, and then we blame them for it. Now, the other thing too is that the question, who owns the problem? There's a question that we have to ask all the time. Who owns the problem? Do the students own the problem? Do the society itself own the problem? Do the parents own the problem? Do the schools own the problem? Do the teachers own the problem? Do the people who prepare the teachers own the problem? And then realize that the part that can be ascribed to the young person is about 1 or 2%. The bulk of it is not, it's outside of their control. There will always be those who will always fall back. But even those, as educators, we can't let them go because people develop cognitively at different rates. But the bulk of the matter depends on how we raise them. This is the question. And then if you look at the absentee rates in this country, you know, it's unacceptable. No country will accept the countries that I mentioned to you: Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, Finland, the Netherlands. They can accept those kinds of failure rates. They can accept the absentee rates. You know, so why do we accept them and say that it was better this year than last year? But we are still in the gutter. In other words, we are a little higher in the gutter than what we were before.
With the responsibility, how much is placed on the parent?
Well, there's a key role for parents to play in the sense that for me, my children's education is very important to me because I'm in the business, you know. But then the other thing is that we have to begin to look at a typical Makola woman. She hasn't gone to school before, but she works so hard to pay a child's school fees. I think that's enough, you know. There are always those parents who are not that responsible, but there are also those who are responsible. But then at the end of the day, the focus is really the environment in which young people are raised. You know, what about an orphan who doesn't even have a mother or a father, you know, doesn't even have a parent? The responsibility at the school sites are so great, and so that the environment itself has to be healthy. We need to have toilets there. We need to have water to wash our hands. I see children in dust that we call school. And when the wind blows, this is the air that these young people are breathing into their lungs. And it's not natural. You know, we have to begin to think about that. And then there was a time where you have to travel outside the country to begin to see what a good school looks like. These days, we see pictures of them on the internet. We see them everywhere. And on TV, green grass, trees, flowers, a sense of beauty. That's the environment in which we want to raise our young people, because even then, cognitively, they develop better. How do we develop under the harshest of circumstances? And we want these kids to
Let's go back to my cutoff point. I don't know if there's any scientific proof yet, but you know, at this rate, you create too many poor people. So then you put too much burden on the few who got the opportunity. And there will come a point where they won't be able to carry you anymore. I mean, now, you know, the national insurance is struggling because there's only 30% paying, carrying 70%. And so every time there's a delay in payment because not enough people are, you know, I'm sure that, you know, when you put 85 people on there or 90% and only 10%, where's the cutoff point?
The cutoff point is where we have to develop a vibrant middle class. You know, if we have the bulk of our population in the middle class category, then we are in business. These are people who can buy things and pay taxes on them. These are people who can buy cars and pay taxes on them, who can go to shop and pay taxes and VAT on them. We need to have that population. But as it is, a lot of people are in the bottom. You know, that is why education is so important for us to raise them. But then having said that, we want to look at the general picture of the economy of this country. And the curriculum has to answer some of the questions that will take us out of our poverty. And I'll give you an example. Here we are, we have standardized examinations, BECE. You either make it or you don't make it. But what I'm saying is this. There are about 200 districts in this country, municipalities and the rest, about 200 of them. They are not all the same. If you look at places where I've trained teachers in the Mamprusi area, and you come to places where I've trained teachers along the riverbanks, and places where I've trained teachers even in Accra, the environments are different. The natural endowments in those areas are different. So what I'm suggesting always is this. There has to be the basics, what you call the 3 R's. Reading, writing, numeracy, arithmetic, and then some science and some ICT. I think that should be standard. But after that, we want to begin to look at the nature, the natural resources in the area. And one example that I use is this. I was in the Tamale area where there was so much in an enclave there, where there was so much cotton that was growing there. And the cotton was blown everywhere, and it was really a nuisance because we haven't learned how to package such a natural resource that's even geared for the textile industry. And then the last month or so, where government had gone to borrow money from the IMF, and part of the money for education is going to be used in buying sanitary towels for young people.
Made of
I said, my goodness. And then if you talk to women themselves who use these things, they say the best absorbents are cotton. So can't we use part of our curricular structure is where we are developing cotton in that area, producing in the school system sanitary towels, so that these young people are now engaged in a productive activity, so they don't come to Accra or Kumasi or Takoradi to carry things on their heads. We accept these things are normal, but it's not normal for a human being to be carrying that load on the neck. The neck was not designed by God to carry that kind of stuff. I mean, look at camels. They carry things on the back. Donkeys carry things on the back. So do horses. Why do we as human beings have to carry things on our heads? And we think it's normal. It's not normal. So, again, looking at how we can begin to develop an economic system where we begin to develop a middle class, and I'll give you another example. Look at the schools that are on the riverbanks. Why are we not growing an industry of tilapias there? Because Norwegian countries, they feed on, I mean, the economy is built on fisheries. You know, every example in the world is there. I've also seen places in the north where rice is growing in abundance. But here we are, we have young people sitting in classrooms, and there are other pictures that I can show there, doing nothing but waiting for a teacher who is never there, or waiting for a teacher who is ill-equipped. But meanwhile, there are productive activities that we can do right there. We have to begin to reorient our curriculum to something that is sensible.
Would you suggest we detach education from government and probably give it to, you know, a whole institution to look, you run it, regardless of who's in power, you're in charge of this?
Now, that's a wonderful question. The challenges that we're going through in Ghana now, it's not just unique to Ghana. It's happened to other countries. I used to teach in the Los Angeles Unified School District. This was a huge bureaucracy that was, over a period of time, becoming ineffective. So guess what the Californians did? They developed what we call charter schools. And that answers your question. We want to look at the community and look at the nature of people who are already set up in schools, in private schools, where the results begin to show. So that, and I gave the example in Ashaiman. I don't know if I gave the example here, but there was a project that I did with, in Ashaiman to look at how we can begin to improve methods there. If you look at Ashaiman public schools, my goodness, it's not fit for human beings to be there. It's sitting in dust. There are no toilet facilities. Children defecate and urinate anywhere. But a few blocks away, there's a private school there that has all these things. And not only that, the grass is green. So in a charter situation, say, my friend, you are so good, by example of what you're doing, we are going to add 2 or 3 other schools in the area as part of a charter arrangement so that you use that particular know-how to develop others, you know. And then, of course, then you monitor it to see how well they're doing. If they're not doing well, then you give it to somebody else. But the important thing to address your question is what they did in Los Angeles is where they developed charter schools or organizations, you know, because organizations are always efficient. The same methods of efficiency can transfer into setting up educational systems that will make the school work. So we cannot, like Einstein used to say, we cannot continue doing the same things the same old way and expect different results. It's insanity. So the time has come where we have to begin to understand that the Ministry of Education structure, as we set it up, and I think whoever you put in there is going to fail because the system doesn't work, you know. So what are the alternatives? Are we going to continue doing the same thing, or are we going to begin to get outside this narrow box and begin to look at other things that are done in other countries that are being successful so that we can begin to emulate the best practices? These are the times of the 21st century. But that's one option. The other option is where all the districts have to be autonomous bodies, so that if there's someone in the district who is in charge of education, it's a professional. You know, we just pick anybody because they've been elected in some way or they've been appointed in some way to man an education system. An education system is a professional responsibility. It's like getting a doctor who is not qualified to treat you. They'll kill you. That's what we're doing to our children. We are killing them slowly You know, if children are in dust and they are breathing it, what's happening? The lungs are not designed to breathe dust. The air has to be cleaned. So this is what I'm beginning to see, that even in the districts, if you have 200 of them, each one of them should have a training center, because we have education training centers that are not enough to begin to alleviate these kinds of results. So we have to begin to kick in another plan where we make sure that there's a place where we can train teachers to be, to be on top of things right there in the communities in which they live. And how it works is this. We can begin to have...
Let me take a break and then we get an explanation of how it works. But I really like this idea of, you know, if there's a good school in an area and there's a few bad ones dotted around it, why don't you just give the school to the good ones to... Because it all boils down to supervision. We're coming back.
Thank you.
Well, hello and welcome back. I'm talking to Anis Hafa, Senior Education, and I like the idea of the chartered school system. So you have the Morning Star situated somewhere. There are a couple of schools dotted around that are not doing well. You go to them and say, listen, this is your responsibility. You look after them. And they just increase supervision, and I'm sure it should work, Anis.
Yeah, it should. I mean, others have tried it. You know, we can. It's always important to start pilot programs. You know, we have a couple of charter schools in each of the districts to see how they work, so we can begin to monitor the process. We can't throw everything on an experimental basis, but at least we should try something.
But should we go back? You know, this 3 year, 4 years, there's the argument that 3 years you're not staying in school long enough. The idea that 4 years, then you're costing the state too much, but that's a different argument. Is the 4 year better? I mean, you're an educationist.
Well, I would take the 4 year anytime. The reason being that if we take into account, you see...
but with us, if you take 4 years, it means you're MPP. If you take 3 years, it means you're NDC. There's nothing got to do with the children.
What we need to
That's how we've reduced everything, too.
Develop our policy along a very simple premise. What's in the best interest of the child? Not what is the best interest of any political party. Many times when I'm discussing these things, they always dangle this political thing. That's my friend, please don't waste my time, okay? I'm not here for that. I'm here for the young people because they can't speak for themselves.
Sure.
Good. So the thing is this, if you have 3 years and you take into account sporting activities, cultural activities, absentee rates and so on, you don't have 3 years anymore. You have 1, you know? But if we have 4, then we spend a little more time to make sure that we get a little bit more out of it. If we think that is expensive, try the situation that we have now. You know, so these are things that we want to look at. I went through the O-level system, and then when I was in Form 1, a person from 5 was 5 years older than me, and we respected the people, and we salute them. You know, they were our big brothers, they were our fathers, and everything else. You know, and if we're in a girls' school, I'm sure the big ladies were your big sisters and the rest of it. So there's a psychological component there, that we are being molded by particular people. Now that you have the 3 years, the person in Form 3 is just as a child as you are. You don't aspire to be like them. You know, these psychological elements have to be taken into account. Because, I mean, I was groomed when I was in school, not just by the teachers, but by the students themselves. And many times when we have difficulties in math problems and so on, we didn't go to the Form 2 or Form 3, we went to the big guns. Because they know the stuff. They've been there. They've done it. You know, so we have to begin to revisit this thing again. The 3 year that we have now is producing, at the end of the day, a certain kind of calamity that we really don't need. If it's expensive, it's less expensive than the rot that we see now. So we have to begin to look at a national policy that no political party touches. You know, we touch everything. And then we promise free bees everywhere. You know, and then we can't come through. The only promise that any political party should make in this country is that God helps those who help themselves. That is the only promise that I believe in. I don't believe in any other promise because we can't do it. Those who are making these promises, will they process their own children through the freebies that they're talking about? That's the hypocrisy there. And we have to be very careful the way we let people know that everything is going to be free for you. You know, and then I've spoken to particular principals in some of the villages where now the word is that everything is supposed to be free. So the parental responsibility is reduced to nothing. So the women or men now are spending their money some other way as opposed to helping their children with it. The government says it's free. Why do you expect me to pay something? So we have to be very careful about making promises that we can keep. You know, this is a serious business. It's not a game. It's not a political game. It's a serious national business.
Right on top of the ladder is teacher motivation. How is it achievable, and how?
Again, that's another question. You know, that's another question. And it's all part of the economics. That's why I think it's part of the larger economics. And that's why I think that curriculum should be seen to be productive wherever it is. If it means processing cotton into sanitary towels, so be it. If it means that there's a growth of tilapia in places, so be it. If there's mass harvesting of vegetables in places, so be it. You know, education that we have now breeds poverty. We sit and sit and sit. I remember I was doing another project in a particular district where I went on Thursdays, and I went on this particular Thursday, and the class was half empty. And I said, what happened to the kids? I said, oh, the parents have come to take them. Because I wanted to woman yesterday, and woman feels now you treat is Ghana Korabe 10 also. Woman cook for they are going to harvest yams. And then something clicked in my head that these are sensible parents. Their means of livelihood is harvesting yams. Yams are a yam is a product. You know, it has an economic value. There's no teacher in the classroom. Yeah, it has economic value. And then even if you look in our syllabus itself, we want to begin to look at the nature of growing creepers, vine-type trees, the harvesting process. All of that is botany. So what's wrong with pulling the reality into the curriculum itself so that we see the end results? What we are educating ourselves as if we're British imperialists. We don't want to get our hands dirty. You know, everybody wants to be so educated so they can have their hands in their pocket and sit in an air-conditioned office. But how many air-conditioned offices can we sit? Doing what? We said a business administration. What business are we going to administer? You know, these are the larger questions that the dialogue has to continue going on, because this business of putting our hands in our pocket and wishing and praying that the cedi will not be devalued doesn't make sense. You know, so these questions are there. We have to begin to make the curriculum itself relevant. Another example is this. A lot of things that young people themselves can do as part of the educational process are not being done in the schools. And basic things. Why don't you grow flowers? Why don't you beautify the area where we are? It all helps with the cognitive abilities. And Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew, one of the most difficult tasks that he had on his hands was how we begin to get rid of the traditions that don't work. He said, and I was reading his book, there's a chapter, that's a chapter called The Greening of Singapore. He said when he came in, people would open the windows of their car and then spit outside. He said that had to stop. People were selling food by the side of open gutters. He said that has to stop because there's third world. We don't even want second world. We want to move into the first world. And these are the things that we cannot do.
Cows grazing in the city.
He read that. Yeah, it's the same thing. He saw that. Yes. He did all that. But he started with the children. Because the children went back home and converted their parents. The same way Barack Obama won his elections. The rednecks wouldn't vote for him. Because, I mean, there are these racist elements. But it's also a culture that is dying out. So who can best prepare you to win? He went to the college people. And he said, this is where I am. Forget about my color. Let's begin to look at the intellect. And young people responded to that. So they, in turn, went back to their homes. And said, Grandma, you should vote for Obama. He said, no, I'm going to vote for this black guy. This is the guy from Kenya. I don't even know what his name is. He said, but listen to him. So there was a mass revolution that those 18 and in the 20-something voted massively for him because they were not caught in the old situation. They saw bigger opportunities regardless of the color of the person who is coming to lead the country. So it always starts with children in this culture.
You see, in our case, starting with the children, we need the teacher to start with the children. And the teacher is so not motivated. And some of them are not well exposed. The teacher needs exposure to share their experience to the child. At the moment, there are children who look at the teacher and think, I don't want to be like you. And therefore, the guy is there teaching. So where do we go from there? Because that's one thing that really worries me.
It's an important question. Anytime I've gone to do training in the villages, I'm in one room. But in the room, I have toilet. I have electricity. It's functional. That's what every human being needs. So we also have to begin to kick those things in. That If someone has to walk 2 miles or more to school and then walk 2 or 3 miles back, how do you develop your motivation? How are you inspired to go the next day and begin to inspire young people when you yourself are worn out? You know, so these are things that we have to begin to look at, that there are particular things that we have to do, and accommodation is a key thing. And, you know, and then look at this. How do we spend our money? How does the government spend money in this country? You know, look at the things how we waste money in this country. The pilfering that goes on, the goats' names on the payrolls. All these things they deprive us. There are opportunity costs to these things. We could easily have used some of this money to make sure that decent accommodation, step by step, where it's visibly seen that these are the things that we're doing.
Time is up. Just one little clue to help us next year. One thing, I don't know, you know, punish parents, you know, supervise teachers. Just one thing, so that next year at least we get 40% pass.
Well, there has to be a national campaign. You know, I mean, how do politicians win?
Jump up and down the country.
They are campaigning everywhere for themselves. Politics is one of the most self-centered activities that we have. Everybody, hey, it's me. This is my face. Vote for me.
Push it towards education?
Yeah, we need to adopt the same principles to push education in the villages, that it's important. This is what it is that we want to do. And we want everybody on board. The amount of money that we spend on politics is obscene. How do people get money to do all these things? So these are the realities of it. We have to begin to now look exactly what you're saying, that we have to begin to create a middle class, because the middle class that's going to support the country. It's not a few people who are going to be taxed out of everything that they have to support the country. It's not going to work. And these are international situations elsewhere, and we can begin to learn that. So that is key. Another way to elevate the standard is, again, I always go back again to the where we train teachers. You know, where you train teachers is not where you go to memorize theories. Part of the training itself, where you have to be in school, where you are hands-on. 1 hour, frankly, 1 hour in a lecture hall should translate to 1 hour in a classroom, where I've seen people with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, and don't even know how to prepare lessons, don't even know how to develop teaching and learning materials, because they are being taught to memorize things, you know, and a lot of these things have to change.
Thank you very much. I knew it was going to be educational, and we've learned something from it. And it's one of those things where we all have to join in together. But you know the funny thing? The real people that we are trying to get aren't watching, because they don't even have multi-TV or even own a television set. 28% of people in Ghana live below $1 a day. So they can't even afford this. And that's who we are trying to reach. So maybe the campaign will work, where we go to the villages and trumpet that the only sikadro in this world today is in the classroom, nowhere else. You're not going to get a snake from anywhere. Just get a book and you get yourself out of poverty. But I think on Thursday, on That's My Opinion, we're going to continue this, because this is a national crisis. Folks, tomorrow we'll be back to do it all over again, and thanks for watching.